Welcome back, everyone, to Sip and Talk. I'm Joe. Ready to get into another topic today. We've got one that's, well, it's pretty intense.
Hey, everyone, I'm Sunny. And yeah, intense is definitely the word, but it's also, really important we talk about it. Today's focus is the brutal reality of war through a Chinese combatant's experience. Heavy stuff.
It really is. The whole reason we're tackling this today is this really stark quote that's been making waves. It's one of those things you hear and it just stops you in your tracks.
Totally. It's this. Take me home. We were so naive thinking war was a game. In reality, war is bear killing.
Wow. Just hearing it like that, you feel it, don't you?
You really do. And this wasn't just someone theorizing from afar. This apparently came directly from a Chinese guy fighting for Russia and Ukraine.
Right after seeing something truly horrific happen to his teammate, apparently.
Yeah.
Lost both legs in an explosion.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine that kind of moment? It just shatters everything. It's like a direct window into that raw trauma.
Absolutely. And that's what we want to do today on Sip and Talk. We want to unpack that statement, really get into the layers. Because it's way more than just a headline,
Exactly. It tells you so much about the human cost, the stuff that gets buried under propaganda or action movie glorification.
So we're going to stick to the details reported around this specific situation and, similar accounts. Try to understand the weight behind that plea. Take me home.
Right. Let's start by breaking down that quote itself, take me home. I mean, that's not just someone feeling a bit down.
No way. It's primal. It's like pure, unfiltered reaction to just overwhelming trauma.
It's the sound of someone completely breaking. Any idea they had about war, about themselves, just gone.
Yeah, it's that deep, desperate need for safety, for escape, for everything war isn't.
It's surrender, utter surrender.
And then the next part. We were so naive thinking war was a game. That hits hard, too, because it speaks to something bigger, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. This whole romantic idea of war, we see it everywhere.
Yeah, movies, sometimes news reports, even video games, right? Especially for young people, maybe?
Absolutely. It gets simplified, glorified. You have nationalist propaganda making it seem noble, heroic.
And in China specifically, there's talk about this rise of war film culture, patriotic movies, games.
Right, like that game Peacefully. It's huge there.
Yeah.
Basically makes combat look like, well, a game. Exciting, maybe, but no real consequences.
Like you just respawn, yeah. And the recruits, maybe they really bought into that, thinking it's an adventure, a way to show patriotism.
Or even just a really intense training exercise, not people actually getting blown apart.
That game idea. It sets them up for such a brutal fall when they hit the reality.
Which brings us to that final chilling line. In reality, war is bear killing.
That phrase. Bear killing.
It strips everything away, doesn't it? No glory, no strategy, no heroism, just that.
Just a raw, ugly act, people getting dismembered, blown up, no filter.
It's the absolute dehumanization of it all. Not just the enemy, but probably yourself too, eventually.
Someone described it as a mechanized industry of life destruction.
Wow. It evokes this image of a factory just churning out death. Efficiently, impersonally.
And for this specific guy, the trigger, the thing that made it sickeningly real was seeing his teammates' legs blown off, right there.
Suddenly, it's not abstract anymore. It's right in front of you. Concrete, horrifying.
Changes you forever, I imagine. Which leads us to the next part, right? Who are these Chinese individuals fighting in Ukraine, and why they go?
Well, reports from the last year or so, 2024, 2025, indicate there's a not insignificant number of Chinese citizens who ended up joining Russian forces, often as volunteers or mercenaries.
And it sounds like the way they got there was often pretty shady.
Yeah, deceptive is definitely the word people are using. Lots of online ads, apparently, on platforms like Douyin, that's China's TikTok, and Weibo.
Promising crazy money, right? Like sign-up bonuses?
Huge amounts. Reports say anywhere from $7,000 up to, get this, $21,000 US just to sign up.
Wow. And then a monthly salary on top of that.
Yeah.
But $2,400.
Exactly. I mean, if you're struggling economically back home, that kind of money, it's massive, potentially life-changing.
You could see the appeal, especially if the job market's tough.
And it wasn't just the cash. They were apparently also promising Russian citizenship after only 6 months of fighting.
So money, a passport, what else?
They made it sound easy, safe even, like you'd be staying in nice hotels, good food, completely misleading stuff.
So people weren't necessarily going for ideological reasons, but more out of desperation, looking for a way out.
Seems like that was a big factor for many, yeah. A chance to escape tough circumstances, maybe support family.
But the reality they found was Well, the opposite of easy or safe.
Brutal awakening. They weren't treated like heroes, more like expendable cannon fodder.
Just sent to the front lines with little support.
That's what the accounts suggest. And we have some really specific grim stories, like those 2 Chinese citizens captured by Ukraine back in April 2025.
I remember reading about that. What do they say?
They described really severe hardships, awful conditions with the Russian military. And they were very clear. They weren't sent by the Chinese government. It was their own decision to go.
Which highlights the individual tragedy of it all. And wasn't there another story on CNN about a guy getting detained?
Yeah. Detained for 21 days just for arguing with his commander because they didn't have enough protective gear.
Just basic safety equipment.
Yeah.
And he gets punished for asking. That tells you a lot.
It really does. It's so far from those promises of hotels and good food. Then there's that incredible interview Chai Jing did.
Journalist. With the mercenary using the name Macaron.
That's the one. His story was incredibly detailed, said he was totally lured there under false pretenses, thought he was going on a tourist visa for a non-combat job.
And instead...
straight into it. Terrible lack of equipment, awful food, language barriers, and he even mentioned facing racial discrimination from the Russians.
Discrimination on top of everything else.
Yeah. He flat out said, I made a mistake. And the battlefield is nothing like the movies, it's hell. He wanted to warn others.
God, that's heartbreaking. And his story isn't unique, is it? There were others, POWs mentioned in Western media.
Right, Wang Guangjun and Zhang Renbao. The Times, AP, others reported on them. Wang thought he'd be a rehabilitation therapist.
A therapist.
Yeah, something completely non-combat. But nope, straight to the front line. Apparently needed armed guards just to go to the bathroom.
So 0 trust, 0 freedom. And the other guy, Zhang.
He was supposedly a firefighter from Shanghai. Thought he was signing up for construction work.
Construction? How do you go from construction to frontline infantry?
Exactly. Both of them just felt completely misled, monitored, trapped. They were appealing to the Chinese government for help. Deep regret.
It's just story after story of deception and brutal reality. There was that Reddit post too, right? Someone begging for medical help.
Yeah, back in early 2024. Just abandoned by the Russian army, apparently, needing medical care and not getting it.
And those 2 young guys who died after just 1 day.
Horrifying. Just 1 day. Shows how lethal it is, how unprepared they were.
So what are the numbers we're talking about? How many people are involved?
Well, estimates vary. President Zelensky of Ukraine said they know of at least 155 Chinese citizens fighting for Russia, and they claim to have proof, like passport details.
And U.S. officials.
They estimate maybe 100 to 200. They're careful to say there's likely no direct connection to the Chinese government itself, that these are individuals.
But the British paper, The Times, had more details about the conditions, didn't they?
They did. Their reporting suggested that not only were these guys lured there, but they were often forced to sign Russian military contracts once they arrived.
Forced? Wow.
Yeah, and apparently had their own equipment confiscated, had to pay for basics like fuel and water themselves, plus enduring racial abuse, and even being punished if they refused orders to kill.
Just a nightmare scenario. It completely shatters any illusions.
Which brings us right back to that psychological toll, the impact on just the human mind.
That phrase, we were so naive, it captures that whole journey, doesn't it? From thinking you know what you're getting into to just complete collapse.
It's like that initial phase of denial, maybe, where the romantic idea of war protects you a bit. War is cool or...
Wait till it isn't, until you see it firsthand.
And then comes that second stage, the regret, the trauma. That's where this combatant's quote lives, the awakening of conscience, as some call it.
But it comes too late, often. The damage is done.
Deeply done. And then there's that terrifying third stage, becoming numb to it all, becoming part of the violence machine.
Thankfully, this guy's quote sounds like he's firmly in that second stage, horrified, regretful, jolted awake.
But what makes this whole situation even more concerning is the context back in China, this apparent lack of, realistic war education.
Right. Lots of narratives about a rising China, U.S. imperialism, but not much about what war actually is.
Exactly. Not much talk about PTSD, what it does to you, or the brutal reality of kill or be killed, or living with life-altering injuries, prosthetics, mental breakdowns.
It's a huge gap in understanding. So this combatant's words, they're almost like a direct warning, aren't they?
Definitely. Especially to those keyboard nationalists, the online tough guys preaching war from their sofas.
Yeah. This is saying, hey, it's not about proving how tough you are or making money. It's about watching friends die. It's hell.
And the psychological burden isn't just the trauma, the PTSD. There's also talk of moral injury.
What's that?
It's like the guilt and shame on top of the trauma, feeling you've crossed a fundamental line morally, witnessed or done things that violate your core humanity. It's a double hit.
Wow. So facing all of this, the deception, the horror, the psychological damage, it begs the question, who's responsible?
And it's complicated, right? No single answer.
Well, first off, you have to look at Russia's strategy, surely. Actively recruiting foreigners, especially from poorer countries, to use as frontline troops, sacrificing lives.
Yeah, it's a cynical use of people as expendable resources in their war machine.
Then there's the role of that online nationalism back in China, pushing this pro-Russian, anti-American sentiment.
But often with a complete blind spot for the actual human beings who go off to fight based on those ideas. There's a disconnect there.
Indifference, almost. And that indifference is maybe fueled by the information environment.
Could be. If state media is painting Ukraine as Nazis and Russia as righteous, you're not getting the real picture of the slaughterhouse you might be walking into.
Which points to a broader failure, maybe, in education. Not teaching young people the real consequences of war, letting them get swept up in slogans.
It seems like a factor, a lack of preparedness for the reality versus the rhetoric.
And what about the Chinese government's role in all this? Their official stance is neutrality, right? They deny sending anyone.
Officially, yes. They call accusations baseless.
Yeah.
But Ukraine insists Beijing must at least know about the recruitment happening so openly online.
And there have been concerns raised elsewhere, like in the U.S. Congress. Worries about tacit approval, part of that unlimited partnership with Moscow.
Yeah, questions are being asked. And then there was that Reuters report. Pretty explosive.
About Chinese military officers being seen on the Russian front line.
Exactly. With Beijing's okay, apparently. Potentially there to observe, learn tactics for modern warfare. That definitely complicates the neutrality claim.
It really does. And maybe the most shocking part, for me, was the report about the Chinese embassy in Ukraine.
Oh, the China Digital Times piece.
Yeah.
About them refusing to help Chinese citizens caught up in the fighting.
Yeah. Calling it a personal decision, basically washing their hands of it.
It's cold.
Yeah.
You're potentially injured, captured, desperate, and your own embassy says, sorry, your problem.
It's brutal. And it brings us to that really provocative question that kind of hangs over all of this.
Do you still want to attack Taiwan?
Right. And it's not meant like a gotcha question, is it? It's more like a mirror.
Exactly. It's asking, fundamentally, okay, you've now seen what war really is. Not the movie version. The bloody, messy, terrifying, flesh and bone version. Are you still willing to do that to people who speak your language, who share your culture, just because of a political slogan?
It cuts right through the propaganda, the nationalist fervor. It's forcing a personal reckoning. Is this what you want? Could you handle this?
It punctures the fantasy bubble. It tries to reawaken that basic human empathy that war tries to extinguish.
And you have to remember the narrative these guys might have been fed before they went to Ukraine.
Right. That Russia was the good guy fighting U.S. influence, Ukraine was the bad guy, and taking Taiwan would be a similar righteous act.
So maybe they saw Ukraine as, like, practice, a warm-up for the real conflict, a chance to prove themselves.
Potentially. But then reality intervened, seeing their own countrymen bleed, comrades get mutilated, being treated as disposable.
It hammers home the truth. War isn't glory, it's punishment. There are no winners.
It's the powerful playing games and ordinary people dying. It's shouting slogans about unity while handing out flyers for a meat grinder.
So that question, do you still want to attack Taiwan?
Yeah.
It just demolishes that entire lie, based on their own horrific experience.
And that question hits differently in China, doesn't it? Because unification with Taiwan is framed so intensely there.
As a duty, right. Glory, the ultimate symbol of national pride.
But most people haven't lived through a major war. They don't truly grasp, maybe, what attacking Taiwan would mean for them personally.
Like, would their own kids have to fight? Could they end up as cannon fodder, just like these guys in Ukraine?
So when these first fighters come back or don't come back or are captured, completely broken, suddenly it's not an abstract political goal anymore.
It becomes personal. Terrifyingly personal. Could that be my son, my brother?
Yeah, the question lands with a heavy thud right in their own lives.
And if you game out what an invasion of Taiwan might actually look like, based on recent conflicts,
it's grim. Forget eager volunteers, probably more deceptive recruitment, high-tech advantage. Maybe not decisive against determined defenders on difficult island terrain.
And the international backlash. Sanctions would likely be swift and devastating for China's economy, affecting everyone.
All that talk of glory would vanish pretty quickly, replaced by, missing limbs, funerals, lifelong trauma.
So the question isn't really for the leaders, is it? It's for the ordinary people.
Exactly. Do you want your kids, your family, fighting and dying in a war potentially based on lies and ego?
It really functions as an anti-war plea, rooted in that soldier's raw experience.
It's a knock on the door of conscience. Remember those words. We were so naive. War is bear killing.
If you can't handle the reality on foreign soil, are you ready for something potentially even bloodier closer to home?
Because a bullet doesn't care about your ideology. A shell doesn't ask if you think you're righteous.
It just tears things apart. It makes the strong kneel and cry, "Take me home."
And our responsibility, maybe, is just to understand that reality, to try and prevent anyone else getting sucked into that game.
Wow. Okay. That was a lot to process. Definitely a heavy sip and talk today.
It really was. And just to reiterate, our aim here is always to explore the information, the different perspectives objectively, not to criticize any specific group or nation.
Absolutely. It's about understanding the human element, encouraging that critical thinking we always talk about.
So thank you all so much for sticking with us through this difficult, but I think really important conversation.
We really appreciate you tuning in and reflecting with us.
And hey, if you found this valuable, maybe consider subscribing to Sip and Talk wherever you listen. It helps us keep these conversations going.
Yeah, definitely. And also give a shout out to our good friend, Micky. Check out his YouTube channel, Micky to Life.
Oh, yeah. He's got fun stuff. Memes, music, wine tasting, and he just dropped a new Korea travel vlog.
Awesome. Got to check that out. Okay, everyone. Until next time.
Still curious, stay thoughtful,
and keep sipping and talking.